So, Owen, you have been doing some great reporting the last couple weeks about this big unionization push at MSU. Before we get into any of the things you found, can you explain a little bit, because with academic staff, I think it can be kind of confusing, that, tenure track, non-tenure track, adjunct, all that. When we talk about a tenure track faculty union, what exactly that means? Who is exactly trying to unionize?
Yeah. So the key distinction to make here is that there's been a union for a while, an existing union of non-tenure track faculty.
Yeah.
And these are the people that, it's more teaching focus in the classroom with the students. That's not to say that tenure system faculty aren't also in the classroom, but perhaps not as much. So it's more research focused. They're writing, they're researching, things like that.
I see. And so these professors, they've been pushing for this unionization thing. And I think as far back as November, when I started pushing for it, and I try and explain just how big of a deal this seems like to people that follow MSU, you got to talk about academic governance, right? And right now we have this system with like a faculty senate where they kind of they have a representative body where you have members, and they talk about things, and they vote on them, and they pass resolutions, but they're non-binding. You know? And I think the analogy that some of the leadership of the union gave me is that they can make a resolution that says this is what the faculty thinks you need to do in the administration, and then they can just kind of put it in a drawer and forget about it. Exactly. There's no teeth to it.
Exactly.
And I think from the beginning there's been this idea that, wow, this union, this would be a big deal because it would give these tenure track faculty some real say, some real power, some real teeth that they don't really have with this sort of shared governance we currently have with these representative but non-binding bodies like the faculty senate. But you've kind of been following this more closely. Can you tell us where exactly they are right now? It's been a couple months since this push has been announced publicly.
Yeah, so, in November, they kind of started their campaign. And then, it's gotten to a point where they had collected enough cards, authorization cards, to say we have a majority. And a majority is what they need to be recognized in the eyes of MSU.
Yeah.
So they formally requested recognition from the Board of Trustees. And they did this in late December, actually when we were on winter break. So now they're sort of waiting to hear back on that. And it's interesting, with this process, there's actually two different tracks that they can go. And there's, a policy that kind of makes it this way. But the track that it seems like they're pursuing right now is just going with MSU and trusting that they are going to voluntarily recognize them.
So the university can opt to just say, we believe you've legitimately done this, and you're a union, we recognize you.
Yeah, it's complicated. Essentially, that's what it is. But they would still go through a verification process. Yeah. But the idea is they would say your bargaining unit is, quote, reasonable. That's in the policy. So if they make a determination that the bargaining unit is reasonable, then they'll go ahead and say, okay, it's fine. We're going to pick a third party that we mutually approve, and they're going to verify this. But other than that, we're good. The other track, though, which they've also been pursuing, but it seems like it's going on the back burner a little bit, is to go through the Michigan Employment Relations Commission, which is a state government body that solves labor-related issues and also certifies unions. And that body has been involved in higher education unionization pushes for a long time. And basically, the way it works for them is if they can verify that 30% of the bargaining unit is on board, then they'll administer an election. And then at that point, you need majority in order to be certified in the eyes of Merck. But as it stands right now, the Union of Tenure System Faculty is going more with the route where they're just going with MSU and trusting that MSU is going to accept that their bargaining unit is reasonable and then recognize
I
the
see.
union.
And they already have cards of support from, because I think the bar for the MSU process, it's just a simple majority, right? Like more than 50%. So they don't feel like they have to go through a whole election process like you might see.
Yep.
I see.
And that was sort of the argument, when this resolution was passed back in 2021 that was controversial. The idea from the Democrats' point of view was that it expedited the whole unionization process. Because we've seen other universities where it's taken over a year to get these unions recognized.
We'll go back a minute and talk us through this resolution, because this is something that I think is interesting where they, we've seen this nationally at, I think more and more schools as time goes on where tenure track faculty are unionizing. But MSU has this board resolution that sort of uniquely positions the faculty to have sort of an easier time of doing this. Can you talk through the politics of that in 2021 when it was passed, what exactly it does beyond just kind of the way that you can get 50% go through MSU, but also the neutrality stuff and all that?
Yeah. So you're right. It does a couple things. It was passed along party lines. At the time it was 5 Democrats who supported it, 3 Republicans who opposed it. Basically, one of the main things that it does is it establishes employer neutrality. which basically says, and I'm going to read from it here, the university and all of its agents acting in a supervisory role shall remain neutral on the issue of union representation in any organizing efforts. And it also says they shall not express an opinion, positive or negative, about such efforts. Yeah, so that's one of the key things it does. And then it also says that the university won't do anything to retaliate against any efforts. And it also, one key thing is it says that the university can only provide information to the union that is legally that is legally permissible. Okay, so it's kind of limited. They really can't say much. And then it also gives the university the ability to correct any inaccuracies that the union may publish, but they have to wait 2 days to do that. So that's, the neutrality is kind of the biggest element of it.